There was a flood in the village and a 1,000-year-old coffin floated up in the water. The female corpse was not rotten and was stunningly beautiful. That night my father sneaked in. Not long after, the woman's belly bulged out. She is pregnant. The Taoist priest was shocked. If a beautiful corpse gives birth to a child, your entire village will be buried with her. I have never seen such a beautiful female corpse. She was lying on her back, wearing a bright red wedding dress, sleeping peacefully in a 1,000-year-old coffin. But the most bizarre thing was, even after so many years of death, her body is still intact, her skin is still as shiny as jade, her cheeks are plump and tender, and there is a cinnabar mole on her forehead. Breathtakingly beautiful. Our village is notoriously poor, with many bachelors and few women. The men who opened the coffin were stunned. Dozens of people gathered by the river. Finally, my father got brave enough to put his hand under the woman's nose. He's really dead, but why is he like a living person? So beautiful. I would be willing to be a ghost if I could sleep with such a beautiful wife. The village chief came to his senses first and ordered the coffin to be sealed. Something strange must be going on. I'll ask the Taoist priest to take a look tomorrow. But just as the coffin was being sealed, I felt a cold gaze. The next moment I held my breath. Because through the gap in the coffin, I saw the corpse suddenly turn its face to the side and open its eyes towards me. She wore a wedding crown, her eyes were dark, the corners of her mouth were pulled upwards, and she looked so evil and terrifying. I was so scared that I quickly grabbed my father's hand. Dad, her eyes moved. But my father ignored me at all, or rather he had never looked at me, his daughter, in his life. He stared at the coffin with a dazed look as if he had lost his soul. Her reluctant look made the other men laugh. Girl, your mom has been away for half a year, your dad is just craving for women. When I see a beautiful woman I lose my mind. That night I couldn't sleep at all. The rain fell day and night as if it was going to destroy this small village. I hate rainy days. Half a year ago my mother also disappeared in such weather. The villagers were very secretive about her disappearance and said that she ran away with another man. But I know she won't. She said that even if she ran away she would take me with her. I took out the small jade Buddha from my neck which my mother left for me. I don't know if it was an illusion, but when the female corpse in the coffin looked at me today, the jade Buddha became hot. There was a red mark on my neck from the burn. I held the jade Buddha tightly, chanted my mother's name in my heart, and gradually fell asleep. The flood blocked the road to the village, and the Taoist priest finally arrived more than half a month later. You are confused. The coffin was submerged in water. Her face remained intact for 1,000 years because of the evil spirit and resentment. If you open the coffin carelessly, you will be attacked. When the Taoist saw the ancient coffin, he cried out in dismay. He found a few old roosters that he had raised for 5 or 6 years and filled a basin with blood. Roosters are pure yang and lack yin. The more ferocious they are, the more they can ward off evil spirits and drive away all evil spirits. Before opening the coffin, he asked everyone who touched the coffin to burn 3 incense sticks, and then poured a basin full of chicken blood on the coffin. As the yellow talisman burned, there were several clanging sounds. The ancient coffin was opened. The scene before them made everyone gasp. The chill is running up from the soles of my feet. The female corpse was as beautiful as before, except that her belly was bulging. It was as big as a baby born in October, and vaguely the belly was still moving slowly. This female corpse has been sealed in a coffin for 1,000 years. She is actually pregnant. Can a dead person get pregnant? Oh. Who made her pregnant? The Taoist priest was sweating profusely and shouted that something was wrong. A rooster can only defeat evil spirits, not demons. A ghost baby born from a beautiful corpse will surely become a demon. He demanded in a stern voice, "Tell me everything that happened when the coffin was opened." The village chief was so frightened that his legs went limp. He dared not hold back and told everything. It turned out that when the coffin was opened, the face of the female corpse was covered with yellow paper. But when he tried to stop them, the villagers had already taken it off impatiently. The master shook his head. This coffin and the yellow talisman are used to suppress evil spirits. Where did this female corpse get such a huge grudge? But everyone still finds it incredible. How can you still get pregnant after being dead for so many years? Alexander sneered, "Look at this woman. She is wearing things that belong to a wealthy family. She is wearing wedding clothes, which proves that she died on the night of her wedding. She was probably insulted and could not enter the ancestral tomb. She already had a hidden fetus in her belly. In addition, someone gave her yang yuan these days. Isn't this baby corpse growing up?" I was stunned and got goosebumps all over my body. The woman's belly grew bigger day by day, and strange things started happening in the village. First, the butcher and his son disappeared in the middle of the night. They died in their beds without any external injuries, as if their bodies had been sucked dry, without a drop of blood left. Then the only son of Aaron's family next door to mine also died. His death was the same as the previous one, all of them turned into mummies. I remembered that I saw them sneaking out several times with their trousers held up. "Master, please help us. This female ghost has turned us into orphans and widows." A bunch of people knelt there and kowtowed and begged. The master turned away and sneered, "Karma is the cycle. Who told you to disrespect the dead?" The whole village was terrified. The Taoist's drooping triangular eyes swept over the men in the village like an eagle. It would take more than just these three to raise a baby corpse so quickly. These words were like thunder from a clear sky. It exploded in the heart of everyone who had ulterior motives. Could it be? My heart skipped a beat and I subconsciously looked at my dad. His bronze face had turned pale, and he pretended to be fine on the surface, but his fists were clenched tightly. I even heard the crackling sound of his finger bones. I knew he was tight Alexander. Because he has encountered it too. Female corpses can confuse people's minds. Ever since he saw the female corpse, something was wrong with my dad. He felt like he was being taken away from his soul every day. His eyes were obsessed with him, he didn't think about food and drinks, and he was getting thinner and thinner day by day. Lately, every night in the middle of the night, he would go out in a hurry and stay there for several hours. When he came back, he would look satisfied. I asked him about it, but he looked impatient and said he was going to play cards in Barry in the east of the village. I didn't dare to expose him for fear of getting beaten. Barry's house caught fire last month and everyone was burned to death. Who can he fight with? That night, I heard the cold rustling sound outside the house again. I tiptoed out of bed and mustered up the courage to follow him out. Yes, I have always suspected that he hid my mother. Most likely it was to punish her for trying to escape. He said that my mother was untamable, even though she had been bought for more than 10 years and was still looking forward to going outside. My father is right. City women are cunning and scheming. He even thought that as long as my mother gave birth to a son, she would be reluctant to leave. The mountain village was quiet in the middle of the night, without the sound of insects or birds, or even the sound of wind. I held my breath and followed him all the way to the gate of the charity cemetery. My dad looked around a few times and made sure that no one was there, so he couldn't wait to get in. What was he doing here in the middle of the night? I didn't understand, so I stood on tiptoe and looked into the window curiously. When I saw it, I was so scared that I almost screamed. He pushed open the coffin and kissed the female corpse anxiously. After a while, an unbearable gasp escaped. I covered my mouth tightly, shivered all over after sliding to the ground, and felt so sick that I wanted to vomit. Could it be that he had been? But that was a corpse, dead for 1,000 years. There was no one alive inside, but my dad kept talking to himself. "Baby, I miss you so much, are you tired of waiting?" Outside the charity cemetery, a tree full of crows was perched on the dead trees, staring at me. "Okay, I'll do whatever you say as long as you behave yourself. From now on, our family of 3 will never be separated again." A family of 3? I didn't dare to think about it and ran home like crazy. The wind blew on my tear-stained face. In this endless night, it seemed as if countless pairs of eyes were staring at me, mocking me. I didn't dare to breathe a sigh of relief until I got into bed and wrapped myself tightly. At this moment, someone hugged me through the quilt. The coldness spread like snake scales. In just a moment, my blood froze. "Don't be afraid, baby, mommy is here." My mind went blank. This is my mother's voice. Only she would call me baby. I am a waste in my father's eyes, and a money loser in my grandparents' and aunts' eyes. But I am a treasure in my mother's heart. My mother is the only college student in the village. But she never smiled as far as I can remember. She was tall and slender and spoke elegantly. Even though the conditions were limited, she would always comb her long hair neatly. She didn't fit in with the other people in the village. Later I learned that she was trafficked. She was abducted on her way to teach in her junior year. Mother. My tears burst out, and those hands kept caressing me through the quilt. The longing tortured me, overshadowing all my fears. But just as I was about to respond to her, I suddenly felt a burning sensation in my chest, and the jade pendant on my neck became hot. The heat, like a brand of fire, jumped from my chest to the top of my head. In that instant I woke up. She is not my mother. The small lamp hanging in the room was ticking and flickering, sometimes dark, sometimes bright. The hands let go of me and I plucked up my courage and lifted the corner of the quilt a little. Through the gap in the quilt, I met a pair of large eyes without pupils. The female corpse was lying outside the quilt, smiling at me. I was so scared that I couldn't sleep all night. The next day I secretly told the Taoist priest what I had seen and begged him to save my father. Several people died in the village and the people were panicking. Some people in the village suggested calling the police, but the village chief stopped them. The reason he gave was, "It's embarrassing. Who would dare to marry their daughter to us in the future? You know where your daughters-in-law came from?" Once these words were spoken, everyone calmed down. Many of the wives of these families came from shady backgrounds. The police came, they would never stay here. The Taoist priest revealed the secret. He is not afraid of this. Once the police come, the coffin will be confiscated, and the burial objects inside will be taken away. Village chief, you can't bear to part with it. Look, everyone has their own thoughts. People are more difficult to figure out than ghosts. The female corpse is now guarded by a Taoist priest, and a number of altars have been set up next to it to suppress evil spirits. My father is impossible to get close to. He is like someone who is lovesick. He walks around the house in a rage every day and can only vent his anger by beating and kicking me. I endured it silently until one day someone came to visit. It turned out to be the village chief who came to collect money. The Taoist priest asked for 150,000 yuan, not a penny less, and each family had to chip in. You can't take the money. When a corpse gives birth, you need to hire a ghost woman. Otherwise, the older the ghost child gets, the more yang energy it needs. Once it leaves the mother's corpse, the consequences will be disastrous. The ghost mother does not induce labor for the living, but only for the dead. If a ghost baby is allowed to be born, everyone within 100 miles will die. My father pretended to be bland at first, saying that he had no money, so why should he give? Who should give? They know it themselves, and so do I. The village chief was impatient. Old Andy, you are about to die, and you are still reluctant to spend this little money? I was worried about my dad, so I blurted out, my family is obviously rich, we have 5,000. Pa. My father was so angry that he slapped me in the face and scolded me viciously. You know nothing, just shut up. I felt dizzy and warm blood from my nose flowed down my face. I didn't tell any lies. Half a month ago, my father promised me to old Arthur from Pajiao in the next village. Old Arthur is really old. In terms of age, he could be my grandfather, but he has a bad temper and has beaten 2 of his wives to death. When I marry this time, old Arthur will exchange my mute granddaughter for mine. This kind of exchange is called wife exchange. In our place, girls are as tradable as money. In a way, I am very precious. I was young and good-looking with all my limbs intact, so old Arthur had made a profit on the deal, so he gave my dad an extra 5,000 yuan. I don't have any money, but I only have one life. My father was so stubborn that he pushed me to the Taoist priest. Old Taoist priest, aren't you looking for help to pick up Yin Xing? Let my daughter go. The ghost-receiving woman is a 70-year-old old lady. I have been doing this job for 55 years, but this is the first time I'm doing this for a 1,000-year-old female corpse. It's extremely dangerous, have you thought about it? Her face was full of age spots, her back was hunched like a dried shrimp, but her eyes were sharp and bright. I said I had thought it over and I had no regrets. I even asked the Taoist priest to spread the news of the ghost to the next village, saying that a girl who received the ghost would bring bad luck to her husband. Old Arthur's family was terrified when they found out, and are now clamoring to return the goods. I'd rather do this than marry 60-year-old sloppy old Arthur. I followed the old lady obediently. You are quite smart, girl. You must remember what I am going to say next. If you make a mistake, we will all be doomed. On the 15th day of the lunar calendar, Grandma took out 3 things from her bag and handed them to me. These are fox fur capes and gloves. They can hide human scent. The yang energy of girls is weaker than that of men, so women have always been the ones to receive the yin energy. Also, you can only use these scissors to cut the umbilical cord of a yin fetus. I saw that there was only one set of fox fur coats and I couldn't help but worry. Grandma, don't you need them? Grandma smiled and said, I used them when I was young, but now I have 1 foot in there, and the yin energy in my body is heavier than the yang energy, so I don't need them anymore. I took the scissors, they were heavy. Under the candlelight, the black blades were not shiny at all. When the time comes, I will assist in the birth and you will do the cutting. Remember this. The fetus is very dangerous and will definitely become an evil spirit, especially if it is conceived by a 1,000-year-old female evil spirit corpse. Once the baby cries, no one in your village will survive. I plucked up the courage to ask, then why can't we seal the female corpse at this time? Granny, a mother must be strong. This applies to both the living and the dead. If we attack the ghost baby, it will die. No one should think of harming the child at this time. After the ghost baby is born, it is immediately placed in the cradle. This is done with the evil-repelling talisman. The Taoist priest then chanted the mantra for 9,981 days before there was a chance to help the mother and child pass away. The charity cemetery is now equivalent to a delivery room. Taoist priests are not allowed to enter and have to set up formations outside the house. As soon as I entered, the indescribable musty and stinking smell of corpses hit me in the face. I shivered, and I was lying if I said I wasn't afraid. My palms were covered in cold sweat. The old lady asked me to light a white candle. The flame lit up, and the coldness in the room dissipated a little. The female corpse was lying in the middle with a big belly. I was very sure that she was more beautiful than when the coffin was first opened. Her lips were bright red, her skin was as soft as tofu, and she was shiny and beautiful. For no reason, I had the urge to ravage her. I avoided her gaze, afraid that she would pounce on me the next moment. If you are afraid, just recite the Heart Sutra silently. The old lady used her special skills and started to press the belly of the female corpse. Her technique was very special, sometimes light and sometimes heavy. While she rubbed, she also muttered something. "I'm your ghost receiver, old lady Lu. You are in your due month and it's time for you to give birth. I know how wronged you are. I know everything. You have suffered for the sake of the child. If you die, you don't want the baby in your belly to become a ghost like you, right?" The old lady said all these words to her belly. As she kept talking, an incredible scene happened. I stared at it blankly, my heart beating wildly. The female corpse actually slowly spread her legs. I suppressed my fear and followed the old lady's instructions to take off the corpse's clothes. Inevitably, I touched her skin. The first feeling was that it was smooth, especially compared to my skin, which has been working in the farm for many years. But it was too cold. The bone-chilling coldness made me withdraw my hand. At this time, blood flowed from the female corpse's eyes. I turned back suddenly and we offered 3 incense sticks before the een was received. It's just like what's said in Tomb Raiders: people light candles and ghosts blow out the lights. People are afraid of 3 long and 2 short incense sticks, and incense sticks are afraid of 2 short and 1 long. But now, among the 3 incense sticks, only the middle one is motionless. This means that the dead are too resentful and refuse to be saved. If you don't give birth soon, it will be too late. By then, mother and child will become demons, and we won't be able to control them. The old lady was furious. Resentment? What exactly is her resentment about? My mind is spinning wildly. By the way, a few days ago, the Taoist priest found the origin of the female corpse in the county annals. The female corpse was named Andrew. Thousands of years ago, Andrew's family was a wealthy family in the local area. Andrew was beautiful and virtuous. At the age of 16, she was betrothed to another wealthy family. It was supposed to be a good match, but on the day of the wedding, the team was hijacked by horse bandits. Andrew was robbed and insulted. After more than a month, she fled back to her parents' home, thinking she was safe. But her parents and brothers, in order to save their reputation, took advantage of her unpreparedness and strangled her to death. The day she died was exactly the 15th day of the 7th lunar month. She was wearing wedding clothes and was pregnant. Her ghost lingered after her death, disturbing the family. Andrew's family sought a master to exorcise the evil spirit, but the master finally buried her coffin at the bottom of the river, implying that she would never be reborn. When I first heard it, I felt sad. It turns out that the fate of the daughters of wealthy families in ancient times was not much better than mine. Times are changing and our situation should also change. I got excited and I don't know where I got the courage from. I grabbed the corpse's hand and shouted, "You were brave and resourceful enough to escape from the den of thieves. You did nothing wrong. The ones who were wrong were your parents and brothers who were bound by etiquette. I know you can't bear to give up your child, but now even if you give birth to a girl, don't be afraid. She can study, work, and choose the path she wants to take. No one dares to bully her. Let the child reincarnate. It won't encounter what you have experienced." He spoke these words in one breath without thinking, and the blood in the corpse's eyes stopped flowing. I bet right. The female corpse also has maternal instincts. If you put yourself in her shoes, you will understand what she is worried about. Soon, the female corpse's facial expression became ferocious, as if she was exerting force. Finally, I heard the baby crying. "Girl, cut the umbilical cord quickly," the old lady shouted. She was exhausted and her face was covered in cold sweat. She was afraid that she could not hold on any longer. "Don't let the ghost baby open his eyes." My forehead was covered in sweat and my vision was blurry. The bleak moonlight fell through the broken tiles. I held out a bloody baby. The stench was strong and the child was still warm. The umbilical cord connecting him to the corpse was thin. "Congratulations, it's a boy weighing 3 pounds." The old lady raised her voice and announced the good news to the corpse. I held the scissors and hesitated for a moment. Because before I left, my father held my shoulders tightly. There was fanaticism in his eyes. "The child must be born and they can't harm him. He is your brother and he is the offspring of our Andy family. Our Andy family finally has an offspring." It turns out that this was my father's plan when he asked me to pick up the een. I said it was a ghost fetus. The master said that if we don't remove it, it will become an evil spirit and we will all suffer. How could a son harm me? Even if he is an evil spirit, he must recognize his ancestors and return to his roots. My father was going crazy missing women and sons in his life. The thin umbilical cord in front of you affects the lives of everyone in the surrounding area. The ghost baby's eyelids moved and were about to open, so I no longer hesitated. Grit your teeth and cut. Then, as quickly as possible, place the ghost baby in the cradle covered with soul-calming talismans. Almost at the same time, the Taoist priest rushed in, chanting incantations and kneading talismans in one go. The dark clouds that had covered the village for the whole night finally dispersed, and the bright moonlight reappeared. The Taoist priest promised the village chief that the evil spirit would be eliminated in 81 days. The village chief was so happy that he cried, and he held the Taoist priest's hand and thanked him repeatedly. But we can't wait to breathe a sigh of relief. Another loud baby cry broke the silence. Instantly, a strong stench hit me in the face and the woman's legs, which were already spread apart, began to wriggle again. A chubby little head popped out. The village chief was so frightened that he fell to the ground. Even the experienced old lady looked ashen. This 1,000-year-old female corpse is pregnant with twins. The two evil spirits appeared, leaving 1,000 miles of barren land. The ghost baby opened its eyes, cried a few times and turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared. After giving birth to the second child, the originally shiny skin of the female corpse suddenly dimmed. There were dense beads of sweat on her face, and she was completely devoid of the original enchanting charm. It has become a demon. No one can do anything about it. Just live your lives in peace. The old lady returned all the money she had collected to the village chief and ran away overnight. Now the villagers were in panic, and Taoist Alexander had no choice but to comfort them. When a ghost baby is born, the first person to die will definitely be the person who was closest to the female corpse. The villagers were afraid of being implicated and dispersed one after another. Now it was my dad's turn to be uneasy. He didn't sleep that night. He asked me to stand guard at the door and hang a bell on my body so that he would know if there was any movement. He also said confidently, "You took over the een, it's bad luck anyway." In his eyes, his daughter is like water that will be spilled, and he doesn't care how he treats her. I didn't say anything mainly because I know my father too well. He would beat me and my mother up whenever he was not satisfied. In the village, beating your wife is natural and nobody cares. On the contrary, when I was beaten, my relatives would kindly advise me, "Don't hit my face. If you break it, it will be hard to ask for money later. Your daughter is pretty. Maybe the betrothal money can be used to build a house for you." So I got used to silence. But I didn't feel desperate because my mother said that in the savannah, it's not only lions that can survive, there are also jackals that eat carrion, and ants that live on leftovers. There is a fine line between strength and cowardice. Only I know the bottom line. But after a night of hard work, none of the bells on my body rang. My father was safe and sound, unharmed. The dead person was the village chief. He died in his home at daybreak. But his death was different from the previous ones. His head was immersed in the toilet and he drowned. At the same time, Taoist Alexander disappeared. The ghost baby he was responsible for saving also disappeared. It must be the ghost baby coming to seek revenge. But why is the person closest to him the village chief? Could it be that he is also? The Taoist priest said that when the ghost baby grows up, it will keep killing people. We can't escape it. The village was in chaos. The village chief was highly respected, and when he died, everyone suddenly lost their backbone. In the chaos, a Taoist priest with an unfamiliar face squeezed in through the door. He looked to be in his 40s, carrying a bag, and looked dusty. The villagers asked him warily who he was. The man said his last name was Alexander. "It was your village chief who contacted me and gave me the address. He wanted to perform a ritual to help the 1,000-year-old female corpse to rest in peace. Sigh, your village is too hard to find." After checking his ID, we were all dumbfounded. Alexander, who has been busy in the village these days. Who else could it be? The real Alexander Taoist priest was shocked when he saw the talisman left behind. He said that this was not a talisman to suppress evil spirits. It was a spell to bring back the soul. The more you use it, the stronger the ghost baby's power becomes. That's why the corpse's belly grows so fast. The men in the village are constantly bewitched. Without external help, the corpse would never be able to do this. The ghost baby is extremely evil, but once you find a way to control it, you can use it for your own purposes. Getting promoted and getting rich is no problem. That fake Taoist wants the ghost baby to recognize him as its master. When I thought about it carefully, I felt that there was something fishy. How could the Taoist find the 1,000-year-old county annals in such a short time, and how could he find it so quickly? I'm afraid he was well prepared and premeditated. Faced with the mess, Taoist Alexander was helpless. He said, "The ghost baby is expected to come to my house tonight." I returned home anxiously. It was already night, but there was no light in the yard. I thought no one was home, so I turned on the light. The whole room was filled with all kinds of milk powder, diapers, and pacifiers. These were all for babies. As soon as my dad saw me turn on the light, he turned it off immediately and started scolding me. "Your brother can't stand the light, so he's locked up." I then noticed that he was holding a baby in his arms. The one I delivered. The ghost baby held the pacifier in his mouth and squeaked at me. Compared to the bloody mess when he was born, he has blood-red eyes, and his sharp teeth are mixed with milk powder and blood. I was filled with fear and felt like I was losing consciousness. "Little rascal, little naughty boy." My father rubbed the ghost baby's face affectionately. "This is my old Andy's child. How could I let a fake Taoist priest harm him? I went to steal it last night and he found me. He couldn't beat me, so he had to run away." "The second baby?" My father immediately sneered. "The first baby is a boy, the other baby is a loss. Whoever loves it can keep it." I was filled with a huge absurdity. "At this point you're still concerned about the boy?" The ghost baby probably remembered that I was the one who delivered it, and stretched out its two skeleton hands towards me. I stepped back in disgust, and my father saw that the ghost baby didn't want to eat the milk powder, so he cut his own fingers. The monster sucked desperately, drinking with a slurping sound and burped with a fishy smell. "Drink more, dear son." I looked at his smiling face and felt sick all over. His forehead was black and the dead air was gathered there. But he was unaware of it and kept calling me a good son and sweetheart. Didn't the Taoist priest say today that feeding your family with the flesh and blood of your relatives can help your family get promoted and become rich? Girl, take good care of your brother and he will help you in the future. Your mother was unlucky. She was not destined to have a son. If our Andy family wants to have more children, we still have to rely on your brother. The next day the Taoist priest gathered the villagers. Tonight is a very ominous day. The gates of hell are not secure, and all evil spirits are coming out. The ghost baby will come out to seek his mother's death. He advised that if anyone had black dogs or roosters at home, they should mix their blood in water and let them drink it as a deception. The villagers cried and begged and the Taoist priest sighed. My ability is limited. I just hope this method works. As for the rest, let's just leave it to fate. After returning home, I did the same thing and smeared chicken blood and dog blood on the door frame. At night, I spread a layer of rice in the yard and hid in the toilet, hoping to cover up my own smell with the smell. As soon as midnight arrived, the baby's crying came as expected. "Oh no," I cried inwardly, "the illusion is useless. The twin ghost babies have a connection. The girl is here to find her brother." The door has been blown open and suddenly I feel itchy on my face. I raised my head. The female corpse was hanging upside down on the beam, her long hair hanging on my cheeks, staring at me. I didn't dare to take a breath, I was holding my breath. The female body slowly climbed down, but she didn't mean to hurt me. She probably thought about me delivering the baby and sniffed me. I felt like she was asking about her son's whereabouts. I didn't hesitate and immediately pointed in the direction of the cellar. That's my dad's hiding place. One day later, the border police station received a call. It is said that a huge murder occurred in Andy's village. It took the police 2 days of hard work and travel to reach this remote village. The village is hidden deep in the mountains and forests, with no railways or direct roads, and it is not even marked on the map. It is said that the villagers killed each other in order to fight for a female corpse. The girl who survived called the police on the village head's home phone. She was terrified on the phone. "Yes, we have a 1,000-year-old female corpse here and they want to steal it. I know it is a cultural relic and should be handed over to the country. The villagers also wanted to bury my father alive. He had no choice but to fight back. Please save him." The police cordoned off the scene, but when the cultural relics experts opened the coffin, they found no beautiful female corpse inside. Instead, it was just the skeleton of an ordinary woman. The skeleton had multiple fractures all over its body, indicating that it had been subjected to inhuman abuse for a long time before birth. It was verified that the skeleton belonged to Isabella, a female college student who was abducted and sold 18 years ago. That is, my mother, who has been missing for half a year. That day my father killed 7 or 8 villagers with a machete. He himself was also seriously injured, with a big hole in his throat. The police sent him to the county hospital for emergency treatment. He was unable to speak and could only look at me in fear, uttering some meaningless monosyllables. The police were very quick and contacted my mother's family. "Dad, this is my grandpa, Professor Isabella." I brought my grandfather to the ward. The old man was only in his 50s, but his hair and beard were all white and his face looked very weathered. My father's face changed drastically when he saw him for the first time. I was so scared that my throat started bleeding. I smiled at his horrified look. "Looks familiar, doesn't it? Grandpa, you are the missing priest Alexander." The evil repelling talisman was fake, and the Taoist priest's identity was also fake. We gradually turned the female corpse into an evil spirit for revenge. That night I pointed out where he was hiding. My father fled in a hurry, holding his son. He got on a tractor at the entrance of the village and kicked me away. I hugged his thighs and begged him not to abandon me. "Bitch, I've raised you for so many years, that's enough." I fell to the ground, not angry at all. I couldn't help but smile. At this time, other villagers came over after hearing the news. They held torches and hoes, looking murderous, and the firelight made the surroundings as bright as day. The leader was my aunt. "Okay, Andy, you really hid the ghost baby, you want to kill all of us." Fortunately, the Taoist priest was prepared and cast a talisman on you. My father glared at me, and if he hadn't been holding the baby, he would have strangled me to death on the spot. "You bitch, you're the one who told the secret." Of course, I explained while crying. "Dad, we finally have a new baby in our family. I think my aunt will be happy too." "Aunt, aren't you most looking forward to you having a descendant? How do I know she'll betray us?" My aunt gave birth to 3 boys and 1 girl, and she often used her son's affairs to bully my mother. When my mother taught me to read, she rushed in and tore up my textbooks. "It's good enough that you didn't drown the little bitch and you're still thinking about studying? I told you to study, I told you to study." When she found out my father was pregnant, she was terrified and told the whole village immediately. The Taoist priest shouted loudly. The ghost baby sucked his blood. "Quickly seal Andy into the hall to ensure everyone's survival." Everyone rushed over. My dad hugged the ghost baby tightly, but he was no match for so many people. The ghost baby was frightened and began to cry. Many worms flew out of the body and drilled into the villagers' eyes. For a moment, evil spirit filled the air, and everyone lost their minds in the miserable cries of the ghost baby. Numbly slashed at the opponent. Hearing this, my dad's pupils constricted. He tried to reach out to press the bell to change the nurse, but I used force and slapped his hand away just like he scolded my mother. "Dad, you must be very curious. Why was it that on that day everyone was killing each other, but I was the only one who was unharmed? Why don't the female corpse and the ghost baby touch me?" I whispered in his ear in the coldest voice possible. "Because my mother is in there too. Her flesh and blood and resentment merged with the 1,000-year-old female corpse in the river. This is the real reason why the female corpse is so evil. Yes, I know my mother is long gone. Half a year ago, I ate the white rabbit candy my father gave me and fell into a deep sleep. But in the middle of the night, a burst of heat brought me back to consciousness for a moment, and I vaguely heard the village chief's voice. That's great, Andy. You willing to give up such a beautiful daughter-in-law? Hey, then you have to raise the price. 35? It's too expensive. She's only 30 at most and she's not a virgin. I'd trade her for your girl? Then name your price. If you dare, I'll give it to you. Led by my father, the village chief entered my mother's room. Soon, I heard the sound of chains colliding violently in the inner room, and my mother screamed angrily. But all resistance was futile. The sugar was laced with drugs and I listened to what was happening in a daze. It turned out that he had been relying on my mother to make money. Yes, he doesn't work and loves gambling. Where does the money come from in the family? Soon I will become like him. When I woke up again, my mother was gone. My father said indifferently that she had run away and there was no need to look for her. But there was still blood on the floor of the inner room. I looked for her everywhere like crazy. It was a rainy night and I followed the traces of the tricycle in the mud all the way to the river. There, I found one of my mother's blood-stained shoes. The village chief accidentally killed her and gave my father a hush money. It It was enough money for him to buy a new wife. Hatred burned in me all the time, but what could I do? I hid rat poison, had a sharp axe, and was ready to burn myself to death. But these were the worst options, and they were far from enough. I have always been a smart girl. My mother said with regret that if I lived in the city, I would not have been able to excel. Although she was chained for a long time, she taught me pinyin, mathematical principles, poetry and songs. Her legs were broken and the bones were visible. I cried helplessly. Mom, why don't I marry Arthur, the cripple from the next village? I heard he's rich, maybe he can help you? My mother, who never took her anger out on me no matter how hard or tired she was, changed her expression. She slapped me mercilessly. My head was buzzing and I didn't understand what I had said wrong. Her face was ferocious and her eyes were red. Remember, you are not Andy Joudy, nor are you some cheap girl who loses money. Remember the name I gave you. Your name is Amelia. You should never, ever think of using your body as capital to exchange for help. That is the beginning of the fall, the first step in a person's taming. You are a person, not a commodity. You should not have a price. Always remember, you don't belong here. She was so angry that she grabbed my shoulder and left a bloody mark. I could only nod my head vigorously. 3 days after my mother's accident, my grandfather found me. It was just these 3 days, 72 hours. The father and daughter missed each other and would never see each other again. For the past 18 years, my grandfather has been looking for his daughter. He searched the area along the railway station holding my mother's photo. As time went by, he changed from a high-spirited professor to a hunchbacked old man. When he finally found me, we hugged each other and cried bitterly. I was in no hurry to leave. I looked at the river quietly. There have been recent floods, and the river is surging like the roar of a wild beast. Mom, I will never forget the feeling of anger. Not even a moment. I will fight tooth for tooth, all of them. I swear, everyone who has hurt her will pay the price. Performed this big drama together with his old friends Grandma Jane and Taoist Alexander. This group of people are ignorant, selfish and cruel. Why not take advantage of their weaknesses and let them kill each other? Andy can die because the 2 ghost babies need their father. He must be tortured day and night until he dies. 21. After the dust settled, I left Andy village holding my mother's only set of clothes. Before getting on the car, I looked at the muddy road ahead and said to my grandfather, "Let's walk this part of the way." In this way we, one old and one young, walked out again step by step, along the road where my mother was abducted. This road is really difficult to walk and I have to try my best every step of the way. My eyes hurt so much. We have waited for this moment for 18 years. I looked back for the last time. In my tear-stained vision, there was no trace of the village. Only my mother was standing in the distance. She had pigtails and waved at me with her happy 18-year-old look, so bright and beautiful. "Hello, Amelia."